I'd love to get through. Joining me now, Sky News host, Daily Telegraph's National Affairs editor, Sky's king of outsiders, let's call him, Matt James Morrow, and Sky's Northern Australia correspondent, Matt Cunningham. Gents, welcome. Rowan and probably Rita will jump me on that one, James, but this issue with the detainee, this foreign criminal was on the run, told to wear an ankle bracelet. He said, basically bugger off. He got away with it. He then absconded. What's the latest? Because I'm told he's been picked up.
Well, the latest is that he has been picked up. They say that he is complying with authorities in terms of strict detention conditions, or not detention, but release conditions, including curfew, electronic monitoring bracelet. But beyond that, the government, Peta, is not telling us anything. We don't know what state or jurisdiction he's in. We don't know what he has done, what he's accused of doing, anything details about what country he comes from. All of this just feels to me like they are trying to manage a story that's going to become worse as the details do inevitably come out, Peta.
I'm going to talk to Dan Tehan, the Shadow Immigration Minister, in a moment. That brouhaha, the blame game at Peter Dutton that occurred at the end of question time. We'll get back to that in a moment. But Matt, a delegation of Labor rank and file members, party members, turned up in the Parliament today. They say they want the same access that people representing Israeli hostages had a little earlier in the week. Clearly, I've said this for a while, given the branch stacking out there in Western Sydney, parts of Melbourne too, in a lot of these Arab communities, I think Labor's got a real issue on its left flank and inside its branches on this issue.
Well, it does, but I don't think the government will be changing its position on the issue. I mean, Anthony Albanese has come out previously and said that we need to be unequivocal in our opposition to what happened on October 7. And given the issues that the government's facing on national security, on border protection at the moment, I don't think you'll see the government coming out and calling for a ceasefire. I don't think they will want to be seen to be in any way siding with Hamas on this issue. But you're right, they do have that issue in its branches, and it's not just on this issue either. It's on issues like border protection. It's even on issues like climate change, where the rank and file inside Labor branches are trying to drag the party further and further to the left. And there are more sensible heads within Labor who know that they need to stay around the middle. Anthony Albanese, who's an old lefty from way back, has even been trying, I think, as Prime Minister, to stay somewhere near the middle, but there is always that push going on from within the branches, and you're seeing that play out in that delegation that's come to Canberra today.
If we can, James, let's go to Melbourne. We know this was on the table, announced today, though. Victorian Labor has done a deal with the Greens, amplifying Matt's point there, to triple taxes on Melbourne properties, holiday homes, etc., if they're not used for 3 years. And this is interesting. This will be something that will be taken up, I suspect, in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. And of course, when you've got the Socialist Labor government teaming up with the Greens here to make economic policy, the law of unintended consequences is going to come and hit this in force. I mean, one part of it, obviously, is that tax on the unoccupied properties. That's part of this broader trend of treating, middle-class property owners and investors as basically being land-hoarding kulaks. But there's another interesting bit to this, Peta. There's also a tax on undeveloped land. And the unintended consequence of that is not that it's going to force developers to start building up on land that they've got land banked, but actually it's only going to make them build expensive projects that they know are going to be profitable. That's the unintended consequence. It will do nothing for housing affordability or availability.
Let's go to this issue, Matt, today, reported in The Australian that hundreds of Indigenous families are joining class actions across the country, alleging racial discrimination by state authorities, this is child protection authorities, that have taken their children into care over the past 2 decades. They're calling this a stolen generation sort of Mark II. It's not relevant or related at all to the earlier instance, but it hits these decisions we've seen, and I've reported here out of the New South Wales Supreme Court. The first one, 2 siblings can now be adopted by long-term foster parents. They are white parents, if I can use that term, after the Indigenous biological mum claimed that the foster family wouldn't understand Aboriginal culture. The judge said, no, I'm comfortable to leave the children where they are. And there's another case too that an 18-year-old boy has fought for many years to be adopted by his long-term foster parents. Again, they're not Indigenous. Matt, this is This is your bailiwick better than anyone's. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I've watched this issue play out here in the Northern Territory for more than a decade, and I think increasingly we're seeing, ideology trump the best interests of the child in a lot of these cases. Here in the Northern Territory now, Peter, there's actually almost an unofficial child protection system that operates outside the official system, where many non-Indigenous carers take care of Aboriginal children outside of that official system because it's too difficult to do so within the system itself. There is continually a push for more Aboriginal carers to take care of Aboriginal children who've been abused or neglected by their biological parents, but in many cases there are not enough Aboriginal families to do so. But they are authorities making it increasingly difficult for any non-Indigenous carer to actually officially adopt or take permanent care of Aboriginal children. Unfortunately, that means that often they're pulled from one place to another. They're taken out of, the stable care of non-Indigenous foster carers and sometimes put back in situations, where where they've been proven to not be particularly safe, or they've been returned to an environment that's unfamiliar to them. We saw in a Royal Commission here a few years ago, the former Chief Magistrate of the Northern Territory say that the cases of neglect far outnumber the actual child removals when it comes to Aboriginal children. So, I think the key point here, and it's interesting that the New South Wales Supreme Court is making this decision, is that, the number one priority here needs to be the best interests of the welfare of the children involved, and not whether they happen to be Aboriginal or not.